Hostage, a Todd Mills mystery, book 3 in the series. Arthur R.D. Zimmerman, publisher, Scribble Pub. Narrator, Eric Aust. Chapter 19. With a cotton swab, Matthew dabbed at the spot on his forearm, where he'd just been poking around with a special syringe, one treated with the anticoagulant heparin. Okay, that was done. They'd all contributed, so on with the friggin' show. On to the big event. Now, if only this goddamn headache would stop. He just stood there in the middle of the room as a swath of pain cut through the back of his head and seemingly all the way to the back of his eyes. "A bad one, hey?" asked the subdued Tina, seated on a chair and still clutching her bottle of Gatorade. "Yeah." He turned to Elliot and ordered, "Look harder, Elliot." "Geez, I'm looking," said Elliot, pawing through a liquor box full of pills and medicines. "Sorry, Charlie. It just ain't here." He picked up one bottle, read the label. "You know you were really stupid to go off your suppressant therapy meds." "Shut up." What really scared Matthew was the prospect of a seizure, the one thing he didn't want to happen now. A while back, when he'd had a full-blown grand mal, he'd not only collapsed, but had also vomited, lost control of his bladder, and been able to speak for hours. He couldn't afford to lose control of anything right now. Matthew had been on an antibiotic to battle the cryptococcal meningitis for a long time, but then he'd stopped because he was taking so many pills, something like 60 a day. This headache, he realized, was exactly what he had felt before the other seizure had struck, and he'd left whatever pill was designed to battle this specific thing at home. Great. "Fuck it," he cursed. "Let's just get on with it." "Oh, fab," said Elliot, jumping to his feet, then lunging toward a canvas bag. "I'll get the camcorder. This is going to be fun. Don't you just love home movies? I mean, they're so je ne sais quoi. Funky, too. So stupid. So real, you know?" Okay, thought Matthew. He could deal with the headache and the possibility of a seizure, but if Elliot didn't stop acting like an idiot, he was going to kill him. All this blather, this nonstop bullshit. "Just give me the goddamn camera," demanded Matthew. "Oh, a little testy, are we?" "Elliot, calm down," chided Tina. Okay, but can I help it if I'm the only one who feels tip-top today?" Elliot turned, squinched up his eyes, stared at Matthew. "Say, you really don't look so good, you know? Really pale. How bad's that head? Say on a scale of 1 to 10. Is it a 3 or maybe it's all the way up to a 9? Give me the camera." "But, Matt, buddy, maybe we need to pay some attention to this. Of course, it could be the first sign of cryptococcal meningitis, as you fear, or it could be a mere tension headache, a migraine." Elliot put a finger to his cheek, tried to recall that chapter. Or it might just be a simple sinus infection. Icky. People with AIDS get lots of those. I, myself, have had 3 bad ones. All that green snot say. I know a lot about this stuff, don't I? Did I ever tell you my hero is Commander Data on Star Trek? Gosh, if only I could know as much as him. A thunder-like rumble grew in some distant corner of the building. A rumble that in turn built in Matthew's head. He squinched his eyes shut, pressed a hand to the back of his head. He couldn't take it. He was going to go nuts. His head was going to split right in half. But then he opened his eyes because, of course, first, he was going to jump on Elliot and wring his neck. "God damn it, Elliot. Give me the fucking camera." "Just be cool, pal. I'm only trying to help. If we know what's happening to our bodies, then we can deal with it. It won't be such a mystery, so strange." And from the side of the room where she sat on a chair, Tina pulled back her disheveled hair with one hand and looked at him with sunken eyes. "For God's sake, Elliot, just shut up and do like he says." With a shrug and a big dramatic roll of his eyes, Elliot said, "Geez, you two are something else. Just a couple of big babies." A lightning bolt stabbed through Matthew's head. He again clenched shut his eyes, and the next thing he knew, the camera was in his hands. And here's a tape, too, said Elliot, slamming a cassette into Matthew's grip. Have fun, Mr. DeMille. Mr. Great Director Man. Matthew took a deep breath, told himself to push it away. The pain. Get rid of it. Ignore it. You're not going to have a seizure. You can't. There are more important things right now. He took a deep breath and turned to Tina. You ready? Yeah, she replied, and then took another swig of Gatorade. That's right, Tina, said Elliot. Drink up. I think you were dizzy because you're dehydrated. That happened, of course, because you had such bad... Elliot, snapped Matthew. Yeah, staring at her, though Matthew thought how she looked so drained, literally so white. Sure, she just lost a ton of liquid, but God, what was happening to them? And why now? Must be all the stress. The moving around, they just had to make it through the next few days, and then, well, who knew if they'd even still be alive, and who cared anyway? What about the syringe? You got it? Asked Matthew. Yep. She does. Loaded and ready. Volunteered. Elliot. I saw her put it in the pocket of her sweater vest. Patting the side of her sweater, the visible weak Tina nodded and said nothing. Very great, said Matthew. Come on, it's showtime. Matthew turned toward the door. Felt his head swell. He took a couple of steps, clutched the metal doorknob, and steadied himself, and then he swung open the door and entered the small white room, followed by Tina and Elliot. Hello, Johnny, said Matthew. Clarendon was slumped on the floor, his butt on the blue nylon sleeping bag, knees up to his chest, head folded against his knees. He looked up, face red and sweaty, brow all wrinkled. His stripped tie hung open and loose, and his gray suit looked as if he'd been sleeping in it for a week. Sure, it was written all over him. He was scared as hell, which was exactly what Matthew had wanted. You people are disgusting, he barked. Elliot shrugged. Hey, he sounds like my father. You'll never get away with this. I beg your pardon, kind sir, countered Elliot, but I think we already have. I mean, I hate to disappoint you and everything, but look at where you are. Chained to some pipe in some basement, far as I can tell. There ain't a bunch of Mounties looking around here either. You might as well face it, said Matthew. From your point of view, things don't look exactly rosy. Clarendon stared him right in the eye. You're sick. Now he sounds like my mother, Elliot grinned. Hey, Matt, this is just like in that film, Chinatown, you know? When Faye Dunaway goes, my sister, my daughter, my sister, my daughter. Only now I'm going, my father, my mother, my father, my mother, my father, my mother, my father, my mother. Elliot, said Tina, clearly exasperated and taking him by the arm. I think your meds are making you a little hyper. You just sit down here and be quiet. We'll take care of things. Okay, said Elliot, leaning against the wall and sliding down into a corner. Yeah, I guess I am a little cranked up. I've taken about 30 pills today, not to mention all that. Elliot, shut the fuck up, yelled Matthew. His voice small. Elliot pulled his knees up to his chest and replied, Yes, Mr. Bossman. How in the hell, wondered Matthew, had they ended up with a nutcase like him? Matthew shook his head, then turned, surveyed the place. Okay, now what? Tina, you want to just sit down there next to our esteemed guest? Sure. What are you doing? What's going on? Demanded Clarendon. Listen, if you let me go now, I'm sure... It's home movie time, interrupted Matthew, lifting up the camcorder. It's time to tell the world what's up. No, said Clarendon, pressing himself back into the corner. No, I won't say anything. You don't really have to. We just want to show people that we have you and that you're alive, though I might add a tad disheveled. Fine, but just wait until they find me. Do you know what's going to happen to you then, do you? You know what, Mr. Big Shot? We don't really care if a SWAT team bursts through the door right now because just getting this far means we've already been wildly successful. With a sly grin, Matthew added, I think you had better realize, Johnny, you ain't calling the shots here. I think you better realize you're in mighty deep shit. This is how it's going to work today. Tina is going to tell you her story, which is a real heartbreaker. Tomorrow, Elliot will tell you his juicy tale. Trust me, it's certifiably pathetic, Elliot said with a giggle. And the day after tomorrow, I'll tell you mine. A confession of sorts. Matthew lifted the camera to his eye, focused, and pressed the on button. Say cheese, asshole. Still wearing her running shoes, Tina edged over to the congressman, braced herself against the wall with one hand, then, biting her bottom lip in pain, lowered herself to the floor next to him. She took a deep breath and brushed aside some of her blonde hair and smiled at the lens, with the remnants of her best model face almost unseen. Her right hand traveled down her side and into the pocket of her sweater vest, where she clutched the small device. Hi, Mr. Clarendon. My name's Tina. The camera's rolling now, and I just wanted to ask if you have any idea why we kidnapped you today. You people are disgusting. Forcing a coy look, she asked, What people? Oh, and don't forget to look into the camera so all the nice viewers will be able to see you. You homosexuals, you deviants. In the background, Elliot started cackling and he shouted, Think again, Dumbo. She's not a lesbo. She's a breeder, just like you. That's right, said Tina, taking a deep breath of air. I'm straight. I'm a mother, and I'm a person with AIDS. Well, I don't care. You want to hurt me, don't you? Clarendon looked right at the camera, turned back to Tina, then started jerking on the handcuffs, rattling them against the pipes. You can't do this. You can't hold me hostage. This is a federal offense. Tina countered. And what you've been committing, sir, is an offense against humanity. He stopped, sat there quite still, staring at her. What are you talking about? Your position on AIDS, of course. Clarendon turned to Matthew, and the lens said, Listen, so I believe in the traditional family, a man, a woman, their children. You fool, snapped Tina. Gay people have been around since the beginning of time. You might as well accept that fact. All I'm saying, all I've ever said is I don't endorse their lifestyle, and that I won't work to defend their special interests. Tina shook her head and rolled her eyes in disbelief. So what you're saying is it's okay for gay people to die because you don't like them, which is repulsive, of course. But what about me, a straight woman with AIDS? There's an epidemic going on out there, and it's a whole hell of a lot bigger than I can handle. Of course it is, said Clarendon, slipping into a politician mode as he tried to defend himself. But it's not the duty of any government to support people who've engaged in proven high-risk behavior. How dare you? Listen, basically all I'm saying is that the government should get out of the way and let the private sector handle this mess. There's never been a disease as lucrative as AIDS, and there's never been one as political either. Tina shook her head. You know as well as I do that the American government would have been all over this. They do something like a Manhattan Project when they develop the nuclear bomb, or a NASA project to get a man on the moon. If AIDS were killing straight white people in the United States, or let me say, straight white men, Clarendon stared, shaking his head. This is ridiculous. I can't believe I'm having this conversation. Here I am chained to some pipe basically trying to defend what I was elected for. You were elected to be a leader, Mr. Clarendon, and as a leader, you're supposed to show people right from wrong. Or perhaps you only care about your political future. In the distant background, Matthew heard it again, that thunderous rumbling. He ignored it, kept the camera trained on them. Tina was doing great. Better than great. Tell him about Chris, nudged Matthew. Tina reached into her pocket and nervously clutched the little surprise lying in there, then turned away and stared blankly at the floor for a long time. She said nothing, lost undoubtedly in layers of memories. So many of them sweet, so many of them painful. Then she looked right at the camera and forced some kind of wretched smile. Chris was beautiful. Yes, she was. Clarendon started squirming. You'll never get away with this, you fools. You'll never... Shut up, snapped Tina, surprised, even herself, with her harsh tone. She then laughed and said, You know, I used to be so polite. Everyone liked me. So pretty, so kind. I was a model, you know, in New York. And I was very successful, too. You'd never know it to look at me now, but... She was on the cover of Vogue once, called Elliot from the side. God, and her hands used to be so pretty. Such gorgeous nails. Tina was even a hand model, you know. They used her hands on lots of TV commercials. That's right, Tina blushed, staring down at the nails that were now ravaged by fungus. But then, she looked at Clarendon. Do you have any idea who Chris was? Of course not. How could I? I've never seen you before. She was. Go on, urged Matthew. Tell him. Chris was my little girl, my little baby. Again, Tina drifted away for a long, sullen moment. 6 months ago, just after she turned 2, Chris died of complications from AIDS. She contracted the HIV virus from me in utero. And I contracted it from my boyfriend, David, who was also Chris's father, and who'd contracted it from a woman, in Thailand. She took a deep breath. David died about a year before Chris. Matthew zoomed in on her. She was being more strong and direct than he'd expected. He was shocked, in fact, at how upfront she'd become. Even as recently as 6 months ago, she was the stereotypical Minnesotan, facing the pains of the world with determined smile. Then again, Chris had still been alive, and there had still been hope. Now everything was as black and white as life and death. Some babies, they're able to... A tear streamed down Tina's left cheek, cutting through her thick makeup and finally sinking into a sore. Some babies are able to fight it off, somehow get rid of the virus, but not my little Chris. I did everything I could. I really did. But when she died, none of the new drugs had been tested or approved for children. I had almost $300,000 saved up, and I spent every dime of that trying to cure Chris. I flew her all over the world, London, Paris, India, visiting all the top doctors who were doing the most radical work. In the end, nothing could save my baby. She just wasted away, and she died in my arms at... The pain burned all over again, and tears blistered from Tina's eyes. Mr. Clarendon, my little girl died in my arms at home last fall. His voice unusually somber and sober, Elliot said, Watching that little girl die broke my heart. It truly did. Clarendon looked at Tina, glanced at the camera and Matthew, then back at Tina. I'm sorry. Thank you, replied Tina. I'm sorry, continued Clarendon, clearly perplexed. But what does that have to do with me? Oh, fuck, cursed Matthew, wishing the camera he was now aiming at the congressman were a bazooka. What are you trying to do, dig your own grave? Weeping into her hands, Tina shook her head, then looked up and glared at Clarendon, saying, I thought maybe I'd like you even just a little bit in person. I really didn't think you'd be so arrogant. But what am I supposed to think of a man who wants to dismiss AIDS as something he can blame on gay people, when I, for one, am a straight woman who got it from a straight man? What am I supposed to think of a supposed leader who wants to slash research, when there are hardly any drugs out there for kids with AIDS, let alone a vaccine? Don't you realize I'm scared as hell about what's going to happen to me? Don't you understand that I'm terminally ill? If I somehow survive the next few days, I'll probably die within the next few months, where I don't have any money left. I spent it all on my baby. I don't have any family. If people like you, Mr. Johnny Clarendon, have their way, I'll probably die on the street. This was it. The time, and Matthew aimed the camera on Tina's pocket and said, Do it, Tina. Yeah, echoed Elliot. Do it. She wiped her eyes, further smearing her makeup, and grinned ever so slightly through her tears. He's really making all this so easy, isn't he? What the hell are you talking about? Demanded Clarendon, suddenly nervous. Listen, lady, I'm sorry about your kid. I'm sorry you lost her. But I didn't have anything to do with it. I mean, isn't that obvious? Right, she said, blotting her eyes with the back of her left hand. And the next thing you're going to tell me is that both David and I deserve to have our lives ruined because we weren't married, let alone married in a church. Listen, as terrible as this is, these things happen. That's reality. That's the horrible side of life. Ooh, said Elliot, slapping his cheeks with both hands. So you're the guy that wrote that bumper sticker. Shit happens. Man, oh man. I hope you had that copyrighted. You could be making a fortune in royalties. Tears dribbling down her face, Tina reached into the pocket of her sweater vest and pulled out the syringe. All eyes in the room focused on the long, thin device, the needle of which was sheathed with an orange plastic cap. Tina held it up and tapped it with a fingertip to get the bubbles out of the rich, dark liquid. What's that?" Clarendon asked nervously. "Chris was the sweetest little girl," said Tina, her voice small and trembling. I always said I'd do anything for her." Matthew zeroed in on the syringe with the camera, then pulled back for a larger view. Horrified, Clarendon stared at the syringe and demanded, What is that? What are you going to do?" "It's full of blood," said Tina, popping the cap off the syringe. "Our blood." "Dear God! Do you realize how innocently AIDS is contracted? Just one little stick of this needle and you'd probably contract it. All I have to do is break the surface of your skin and get a little of our blood on you, and then—" "Stay away from me!" "But that's why we brought you here, Congressman Clarendon," she said calmly, recounting the horrible truth. "And that's what we're going to do. Give you AIDS." "Sweet Jesus!" gasped Clarendon. All of a sudden, he flew into a frenzy of panic. More quickly than any of them could have imagined or anticipated, he lunged out with his foot, kicking Tina's arm, caught totally unsuspecting. Tina screamed and the syringe flew out of her hand, hurtled across the room and broke into a bloody mess against the wall, pathetically weak. Tina fell back like a raggedy doll, flopping onto the floor in a sobbing heap. "Tina!" shouted Matthew as he threw the video camera into Elliot's hands. Clarendon shrieked, "Stay away from me, you fucking bitch! Stay away from me, all of you!" Overcome with fury, he lunged at her a second time. He got only a few inches, however, before the handcuffs attached to his left hand jerked taut, yanking him back into place. He shouted more profanities, then swung his foot out again, this time kicking Tina in the thigh. She tried to push herself up, but couldn't, and her face fell to the floor. "Don't hurt her!" shouted Matthew, who lunged for Tina, grabbed her underarms, then started dragging her back. Elliot, clutching the camera and standing a safe distance away, stared down at Clarendon and yelled, "We're really gonna do it, you know? We're gonna give you AIDS." "Fuck you!" shouted back Clarendon. "You're dead, all of you are dead." "Oh yeah, well, for your info, so are you, Mr. Congressman asshole." It took more strength than Matthew had, but somehow he did it. He dragged Tina out of there, pulling her through the doorway and back into the main room. Elliot hurried after him, turned around, flipped Clarendon the bird, and then slammed the metal door as hard as his thin arms could manage. Lying in a heap on the floor, Tina sobbed. Chris! "That fucker!" cursed Matthew. "What an asshole! Are you all right, Tina? Did he hurt you?" "I just want my baby back." "We're going to get him. Don't worry." "You bet we will," added Elliot, his face deep red. "You did real good, and it'll happen. Just wait. You'll see. We're going to do it for little Chris. I swear we will. That bastard's going to get sicker than all of us." "Are you all right?" Matthew bent over and touched her leg. "Where did he kick you?" With a startled, even frightened face, she looked up quickly, and her red face blanched. Clutching her stomach, Tina twisted toward the bathroom. "Oh my God! I gotta go! Help me! I gotta go now!" "Elliot!" shouted Matthew. The two of them snapped into quick action, grabbing Tina by each arm and jerking her to her feet, then scrambling across the linoleum. As she was rushed toward the bathroom, Tina began yanking up her jeans skirt, and once she was through the door, she leaped for the toilet. Matthew spun around, shoved Elliot back, and the two of them fell out of the bathroom, pulling the door shut behind them. A half-second later, there was a painful explosion of diarrhea and gas. "Ow!" sobbed Tina from behind the closed door. Elliot looked at Matthew, wrinkled up his nose, and then reached for a Coke. "Wasting syndrome is the ickiest, ain't it?" Matthew shook his head. "Oh, Christ. I guess we should have expected Clarendon to be stronger than all three of us put together." Matthew took a deep breath, leaned against the wall, and clutched his throbbing head. The tension was growing so much that his ears were pounding and ribbons of light were flashing before his eyes. Of course, he knew what was coming. That much was as obvious as a dark thunderstorm on a horizon. "Listen, I got everything we need on tape, he said, and then paused to catch his breath. My head's killing me. I've got to go pick up my pills, the ones I left at home. What? Gasped Elliot, freezing. Are you nuts? You can't leave now. Everything's on track. Everything's still going according to plan. But, Matthew snapped, I'll be right back. Oh my God, Matthew, said a panicky Elliot. This is the worst time, too. Jesus Christ, you moron, I said I'll be right back. What? But, Elliot's voice was small and shaky as he added, well, I guess, okay. Just don't be too long. I won't. I mean it, Matt. Tina and I, we need you. I know. He stepped over to the bathroom door, put one flat palm against it, and called, Tina. From the next chamber came something not much more than a whimper. What? I'm going to go out for a bit, but Elliot will be right here, and he'll take care of you. I'm going to pick up my meds and then deliver this tape to our favorite television reporter, just like we talked about. Are you going to be okay? Sure. Her voice breaking as if she were crying, Tina said, I'm sorry, Matthew. I should have just done it. I should have. Hey, you did great, babe. Something aching to a knife stabbed his head, and he clutched his brow, then said, Don't worry. I got everything on tape. It's all happening. It's all going to work. But I didn't. Shh. Don't you worry. I'll be back soon. Matthew turned over at him and, in a weak voice, advised, Keep an eye on her, Elliot. Sure. But you just come back as fast as you can. Elliot turned, stared at Matthew, and shrugged. You come back fast because I'm scared, Matthew. I really am. A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.